And hello YouTube, this is JS Man I'm Smart, and I'm here today with another brand new video for tutorials of JS. In today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at Adobe Photoshop and how to recreate the Instagram retro effect, as well as teaching you how to recreate some other cool photograph effects. If you happen to see a photograph somewhere and you see this cool effect on it, and you're wondering, well, how did they create this effect? How can I recreate this effect they're using on a specific photograph? We're going to show you how to look through different color channels and use a method called channel contrasting to recreate effects and create this retro Instagram effect. Now, here we have a before shot. This is a picture of a regular picture that we have with no effects added on. And then up here in our second photograph, we have the same picture, but with the retro Instagram effect added on. Now, if you're a person who likes this effect and you're wondering, well, how can I apply this effect? You can do it very easily in Photoshop without any third-party plugins, any third-party websites, without any filters that you need to use. You can recreate this right here in Photoshop very easily and efficiently. And the same method you can apply to other effects as well. So if we take a look at the channels here, here's channels right next to the layers panel. We have a channels panel. And we want to look at the channels on both pictures here. Now, the RGB channel is the mixture of the red, green, and blue channel, which creates the color for this picture. But essentially, if we want to take a look at some of the individual channels, that's going to be the important part in this tutorial. So let's take a look at the red channel, for instance. Now, if you're unaware, the red, green, and blue channel each have different colors and different contrast levels. Once these three get combined, we have an RGB channel, and that creates the color of the picture. But if we take a look, in the original shot, we have red, green, and blue. The contrast levels are fairly equal to each other. We have a good amount of contrast here, a good amount of contrast here, and a good amount of contrast here. And you can tell because you can look at the waves here, and you see that white there. The more contrast you have, the more white something will be, and you tend to get the darkers tend to be less visible, and the brights to be more visible. But as you can see here, if we take a look at these different channels, the contrast is very equal across the three channels. But if we take a look at the Instagram retro effect, we can see that the contrast in red is very high. We can see that the contrast in green is slightly lower, and the contrast in blue is even lower. So to create this effect, essentially what is happening is the contrast is being adjusted on each of these channels to create the retro effect. So yes, all you'd really have to do is adjust the contrast in the three different channels here to recreate this effect to go from before to after. Now we're going to be trying this method out on one of our own photos here, and just exactly what I explained to you, adjusting the contrast. Now essentially you can adjust the contrast at different levels by going up to image, going to adjustments, and then going to levels or curves. However, what we're going to do is create a adjustment layer. That way we're not doing destructive editing, and we can look at the before and after result, and we can toggle on and toggle off the changes on the fly. So we're going to go up to layer, new adjustment layer, and we're going to head to levels here. Now, like I said, you can use curves. If you're very familiar with the curves dialog box, you can definitely use curves. I do have a tutorial explaining how to use curves in GIMP, and it's very similar using it in Photoshop. So if you'd like to learn about curves, I have a tutorial on that. But if you don't like the curves dialog box, then we're gonna use the levels adjustment layer, because most people know how to use the levels adjustment layer a bit easier. It's more common knowledge than the curves one is. So we're going to layers. We're gonna go to new adjustment layer, and we're gonna head to the levels. And levels here, what it's gonna do is if we head over to our levels option, if you end up having to, if Photoshop directs you to this box right here, then just head on over to the levels section right here by pressing this icon here. And what you can now do is change the contrast. If you want more contrast, go ahead and move these sliders inward like so. And as you can see, we're getting more contrast. If you want less contrast, go ahead and slide these sliders in like so. And we get more, and we get less contrast. So more contrast, you want to move the top inward. Less contrast, you want to move the bottom inwards. But what's happening here is we're adding the contrast adjustments to the entire RGB. What we want to do is adjust it by the channel, red, green, and blue. So let's start with red. We're going to head to red here, and we're going to take a look at our red channel. So make sure our red channel is selected. And if we analyze what's happening over here, we see that in our before shot and in our after shot, our red channel has a lot more contrast. The contrast is being increased. So we're going to do the exact same thing in our levels here. So we're going to head to red. And for our contrast, we're going to increase our contrast. We're going to bring our contrast down to increase it a bit. Like so. Now for our green channel, if we take a look at our green from before and after, our green, there are slight changes made. In some retro effects, there's barely any change made, but in this retro effect, there are some slight changes made in the green channel. We have a bit less contrast. So contrast is not being increased this time, but rather decreased. So we're gonna head to our green channel next, head to green. And to decrease the contrast, we're gonna go ahead and move these sliders inwards. But there's not too many changes being made, so we're not gonna make some huge, we're gonna make slight subtle changes, maybe something like that. We're decreasing the contrast just a little bit. And then our blue channel, if we take a look at our before and after in our blue, we can see that there's a heavy change made. Lots of contrast is taken out. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to head to our blue channel, make sure we're at blue here, and we're going to take a lot of contrast out. So it looks sort of like that. Maybe that's too much, but you can make adjustments afterwards. I'll show you in just a second. So perhaps something like that. Exactly. And now when we go ahead and hide this real quick, and if we toggle the RGB on, as you can see, we've created the Instagram retro effect. And if we toggle this on and off, you can obviously see the changes we made. This is before, this is after, and we basically recreated this effect just like in this picture, where a lot of the colors are a bit more contrasty, where the red sticks out a bit more with this retro effect. Compared to the before and after shot here, we've recreated the exact same thing here by just working with some of the channels and increasing and decreasing the contrast. Now you can very easily double click over here and go back to levels, and you can adjust this even more. If you want to make some more adjustments, you can go to red again and you can adjust it to your liking. Perhaps you want more contrast, perhaps you want less contrast, you can do so. You can go to the different channels here and play around with them if you want more or less of something. To fine tune it, you can do some fine tune adjustments, but otherwise you can definitely keep it like it is and you'll be good to go. Now the neat thing about this method is that once you start recognizing these different effects, say you see this effect on a picture, like, hey, this is a retro effect. I want to recreate this effect. Well, I know that, usually they tend to boost the contrast up as they do in the red channel here. So I'm going to go ahead and boost the contrast up in my red channel. And I know that they boost the contrast down in my blue channel, so I'm going to do that as well. And as you start to recognize these different effects, you can use this method of channel contrasting to create other effects. For example, say you see on Google a nice effect on a picture and you want to know how they create this effect. Well, just save the picture, drag it into Photoshop, and analyze the different channels. As you analyze the red, green, and blue channels, you'll see, hey, maybe the blue channel has a lot more contrast, maybe the red channel has a lot less contrast. And you can sort of recreate that effect on one of your own photographs and map the same contrast levels and brightness and darkness levels in the different channels, and sort of not copy them, but sort of make similar adjustments as the photo with the effect has on, and you can recreate many different effects. So this is a great way to not only learn about the different channels and learn about different effects, but also to add more effects to your knowledge and increase your knowledge by changing and playing around with different effects and sort of not really memorizing, but identifying what's happening in a specific effect and being able to take that identification and apply it to one of your own photographs to apply a similar effect and recreate that effect. So hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. Hopefully you found it very useful and informative. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave in the comment box down below. I'll definitely be down there to answer any questions you have. And if you like this video or tutorial, I also have several other tutorials on my channel about Photoshop, about audio editing, video editing, Premiere Pro, Windows Movie Maker, Audacity, GIMP tutorials as well. If you're interested in software stuff and about design and editing, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we have plenty of other tutorials on the channel. So go and subscribe subscribe. Would love to have you on board. And if you'd like to donate $1 to my Patreon page, anything as low as that, it's very helpful, very much appreciated. Click the card in the top right hand corner of the screen and it'll bring you to the page. And if you want to check out my vlogging channel, music channel, the gaming channel, or the advice channel, you can click the links in the description as well as the links on the end card. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching as always, and this is GS Man I'm Smart, and I'll be back sooner than you think. Don't go anywhere.